Mapfre is a global insurance group that covers a wide range of insurance solutions in over 100 countries worldwide. Their vision is to fix things when they go wrong and prevent them from breaking in the first place. With their Mapfre open innovation dedicated structure, they try to make customer-centric transformation happen. Today, they will share the status of the industry and their point of view and vision. Next on stage, Mapfre.
So today we want to talk about end-to-end claims automation, and we want to talk about errors to avoid when doing such projects. So first, what do we mean by end-to-end claims automation? So we're talking about claims process, of course, and we're talking about an approach to be able to process claims fully automatically with no human intervention. So naturally, it starts with a digital channel, a digital collect of information. And then it includes real-time processing of all the data. It can be sometimes structured but also non-structured, like free text documents. A real-time application of business decisions about the claim, and real-time conclusion to the claimant, as well as real-time actions in the system. Everything has to be done automatically. And usually we have there's examples for just FNOL, but claims sometimes go beyond FNOL, first notice of loss. And so end-to-end automation in our language is really, you have a claim, can be, sometimes you can close it at FNOL, sometimes it goes beyond, but everything is done automatically. And one of the key values here is that, of course, with such approach, then you can have claims that can be processed in less than 2.5 minutes, and people that can be reimbursed automatically, and of course with very high accuracy.
Well, first block. As you know, AI need learning and improvement. This learning and improvement is continuous. And this is the reason that you have to pick the right use case. So be careful with the type of claim file you choose for your project. On paper, hail damage fit the requirement for the perfect candidate. It means good volume, low complexity from operational point of view, low emotional load from customer perspective. But what about the seasonality? By being a claim file concentrated in a short and a specific period of time, the possibility of measuring the evolution of the recall, precision, false positive, false negative, were greatly reduced.
Another common error that we can make when selecting the use case is often we say, okay, we're going to go for full end-to-end claims automation for simple cases. And goods breakage is an example of a simple claim. You drop your phone, you break it, some insurers will cover it. It's very straightforward. But it's actually when you start digging into the scope, you realize it's not always that straightforward. For example, you have to be sure it's the phone of the person, because all of a sudden, if there's a third party, then it's much more complex. You want to avoid that. That's not in the scope. As well, it only works if it is an accident. And you cannot ask to the client, was it an accident? Because if you ask that, for sure, they will always say yes. So you need to ask them to give them the story and then understand from the story if it was an accident. And all of a sudden, what seemed to be a very simple type of claim actually requires a lot of more complex analysis to be able to get to the scope. And that's another common error that can be made.
Well, the interaction between the client and the insurance company is made through a chatbot. And the conversional design becomes a critical aspect in the project. Well, the decision made by the AI solution are based on the information and the documents and the pics provided by the client, and also on the information typed through the chatbot by the client. And in this case, you have to pay attention that the customer has to perfectly understand the question asked by the chatbot, and thus guarantee that the customer could provide the correct and the necessary information to move forward to the handling process and to the end of the process in the right way.
And in this setting, our conclusion is that it's not always natural from insurance to adopt an iterative approach, and yet it always ends up to be quite necessary, because even if you do hundreds or thousands of internal tests to be sure, for example, that the questions are easy to understand internally, you can never know. When you deploy the solution to real people in production, you don't really know how they react. And the only way to cope with that is to get an iterative approach, which is the standard approach for digital products, but that's not always very common in insurance, and you want to provide the best service from the start. And it's the same with the second common error here that we're describing, which is about the rules. So a big aspect, of course, a big challenge of claims end-to-end automation is that the decision have to be accurate, of course. We don't want to pay a claim that should not be paid. And on the opposite, we don't want to deny a claim that should be accepted. And these rules, usually they will come sometimes from regulation around liability, for example. They may come from the policies, but a lot of them also comes from just the business, what the claim handlers do in their everyday job. And this is not always very clear. If you ask claim handlers what are all the rules that you apply every day, they won't be able to list them because there are too many of them. It's the same as when you ask somebody what are all the films you saw in your life. You cannot do that. But then if you ask one by one, did you see it? Do you apply this rule, this rule, this rule? Then they can. And that's why usually the only way we found to be able to face that challenge and that error is, instead of assuming that we have the list of rules, is to actually test really in production with a way to make sure that there's no errors, too many errors. And then while we test, we always need to get the claim handlers to make sure the AI is always being correct, so that then it can be, or not correct, and then it can be corrected and learn from that. And naturally, then, of course, the rules that have to be applied sometimes also have an impact on the design, and so it's a generic loop that then is set up in place. The third part we wanted to cover is about integration, and it may seem an obvious topic, but integration is of course critical, but there are potentially some key aspects related to claims automation. And one of them that usually don't think of at the first time is related to authentication, where actually when you report a claim on the phone, usually the claim handlers will ask you some questions, and that's how they authenticate you, but you don't really see that, and that's not really a big topic because it's very easy to do. Now, when this becomes automated, it has to be done well, and all of a sudden, when there are several systems, if it's not done well, then the UX is not good, and all of a sudden, what you thought was mostly be sure the claim is well done properly, then this problem in authentication can ruin the experience. And so authentication is a small topic, as it seems, like a small technical topic that can become quite important for the full end-to-end experience.
I don't know if we have IT guys attending this show and tell. Sorry, but I am saying something, perhaps it's not good for you. The AI solution is one more piece of the IT puzzle, and authentication becomes the key element for the best customer experience and for the best communication between the different operational systems that must be integrated in the project. And this is also very important to pay attention and to keep in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.